With Flash's dead body found on the beach, the Justice League now know that this vampire war is more real than ever, and Batman obviously has his own theories as to who the secret vampire that killed Flash is, which will eventually lead to some insane fights. This is the story of DC versus vampires that shows us what the DC universe will look like if it was invaded by vampires. The story begins with a man by the name of Andrew Bennett seeking out the help of the Justice League. When his hat falls off, he bursts into flames but is quickly rescued by Hal Jordan, who ends up taking him into the Hall of Justice to recover. Andrew was in a rush wanting to warn the Justice League about an incoming threat, but Hal just tells him that they're on a mission off planet. But then Zan, one of the Wonder Twins, comes in and gets introduced to the vampire Andrew. Andrew then begins to explain the incoming threat, essentially saying that the vampire queen who for decades has prevented vampires from attacking humans is now dead, and she is replaced by a king who basically wants to take over Earth, which essentially could lead to a war. And seeing how serious the situation is, Zan immediately wants to inform the League about this, which ultimately made Hal get caught in his lie about the League being off planet. So he was essentially left with no choice but to get rid of them both, as he reveals that he's a vampire and puts Zan in a blender to blend him and drink his blood. And as he explained how his light energy powers protect him from the sun, he burns Andrew to death, but fortunately enough, Andrew still managed to get a warning letter across to Batman. Batman therefore immediately calls the Bat family in for a meeting during the daytime, where he explains the situation to them while serving them holy water to make sure that none of them are vampires. He then makes them hold up holy crosses for a good measure, and it's also worth mentioning that the Bat family was particularly surprised each time Damian passed one of those tests. He then shows them the lethal arsenal of weapons they'll be using to clean up the vampires, going by the logic that you can't kill something that's already dead. Elsewhere, we see Hal meeting up with Barry on a beach to tell him that a very serious war is coming and how he basically really wishes that they were on the same side, as he then wraps him up, stating that if Barry was ever to turn into a vampire, his metabolism would make him drink the blood of every single being on Earth, which the vampires just can't have, so he has no choice but to get rid of him. The next day, the League would come to discover Barry's dead body on the beach, and while Hal is trying to act sad, talking about why did it have to be Barry, Martian Manhunter asked Bruce if he had any theories as to who the killer could be, to which he very carefully said none that he's willing to share right now. Batman was extremely distrustful of everyone and thus went on his own to investigate this further until he was found by Jana, the other Wonder Twin, who was still devastated over the loss of her brother. But while crying her heart out, she gives Batman the only thing that was left of her brother, which was his fingertip. Batman quickly notices that it was cut too clean to be cut by anything else than straight up hard light. Meanwhile, Diana meets up with Hal on the beach, where she brings up the fact that Hal kinda got over Barry's death a little too quick for being his best friend. She therefore ties him up with the lasso of truth, forcing him to reveal to her that he's the vampire who killed Flash. But instantly, using hypnosis, Hal freezes her in her place and turns her into a vampire. And while Black Canary and Green Arrow are discussing some strategies, talking about how it would be game over if Batman gets turned, a Justice League meeting suddenly gets called. The entire League shows up except for Batman, as Diana and Hal then rush in, stating that Batman was the one to kill the Flash. And Batman being Batman, he was more than ready for what was coming, as he knew that Hal knew that he knew. He therefore shuts off the lights in the Batcave, tricking Green Arrow to shoot a decoy, and pulls up on him from behind. They quickly get to an all-out brawl until they realize that neither of them is actually a vampire, and therefore started discussing each other's leads, as Bruce then reveals to Oliver that Hal is the vampire who killed Flash. And while all of this is happening, we see the rest of the Bat family chasing down leads as to who the Vampire King possibly could be, and they think they're starting to figure it out. And while Batman and Green Arrow were making plans, the alarm goes off in the Batcave as Diana confidently walks in, only for Bruce to instantly figure out that she too is a vampire. And when Hal shows up, Batman and Oliver go hiding until the entire League straight up broke in to confront them. Things quickly heat up as a fight between the two sides breaks out until Superman grabs both of Bruce's wrists to explain to him that he can't take on the entire Justice League on his own, which he obviously disagrees with, as he clicks a hidden tooth to breathe out kryptonite gas, allowing him to knock down Superman. Cyborg then tries to talk things out, and Bruce simply claims that he has evidence proving that it was Hal who killed Flash, so he tells Cyborg to plug into the computer, only to send so much energy through him that he causes a blackout in Gotham. He then sneak attacks Hal with yellow light, allowing Oliver to come into play, shooting Hal, Martian, and Hawkgirl. He splashes Wonder Woman with holy water, revealing to Hawkgirl that she is a vampire, which only forces Diana to turn Hawkgirl as well. Eventually though, Bruce and Oliver would kinda lose control of the fight and would get saved by the Bat family at the last second. And on the way out, Bruce blows up the Batcave, leaving Superman between the hands of Diana and Hal. But as soon as Batman started to retreat along with the Bat family and Green Arrow, Diana and Hal instantly pull up on them once more. They immediately get to it, and Batman purposely lets himself get caught in the lasso of truth so that Jason turns on a device covering the entire place with UV light to burn Diana. But since Hal doesn't get affected by UV light, he captures the Bat family, but once again this turns out to be a part of Bruce's plan, as Alfred comes from behind and cuts off Hal's arm, making him burn without the ring. Oliver then talks to Hal for a bit, basically shaming him for killing Barry, and then kills him once and for all. But while he's doing that, Bruce gets a call informing him that they have been fooled because Joker turned out to be dead, meaning he isn't the Vampire King they have been speculating him to be this whole time. And just as he began realizing that only one of them could have fooled them like that, Nightwing punches him through the chest, revealing that he's been the Vampire King all along. A fight breaks out between them all, but none of them seem to be keeping up with this enhanced Nightwing, as Tim straight up gets crushed and Damian gets turned into a vampire, leaving it up to a one-on-one with Jason, who actually gets a pretty good grip on Nightwing and would have actually killed him if it wasn't for Wonder Woman biting him in the neck. But since Jason just can't allow himself to turn into a vampire, he shouts out to Oliver, telling him just to do it, letting an arrow fly straight through him. And after this, things calm down for a good while as Gotham basically gets turned into the headquarters for the vampire army. But in a nearby alley, we see the vampire Damian attacking the Martian Manhunter, where he then later at the vampire headquarters collects his bounty from Black Mask for killing a Justice Leaguer. Damian asks Black Mask for a meeting with the King Vampire, but Mr. Terrific then enters, telling Damian that he has to capture one of the Bat family for him to get that meeting. And that's when we see Damian pulling up on the heroes, revealing that he's actually a double agent, as he's a vampire but is actively working to help the humans, as he's been taking targets off the vampires' radar by making them think that they're dead, all while surviving on pig blood instead of humans. He then presents the idea of taking Alfred as a hostage to get that meeting with Nightwing, only for Nightwing to quickly figure out that it's not the real Alfred, it's the Martian. Damian then charges at Nightwing, making him confused as to why Damian would kill his own king, to which Damian basically expressed that he doesn't care, he just wants revenge for his dad. But then immediately stops when Nightwing reveals that he's captured Alfred, giving him the choice to either keep fighting or save Alfred. Without much hesitation, Damian rushes to save Alfred and even kills Black Mask on the way there. He eventually gets there and kills Fire before she gets to touch Alfred, but Fire's UV light hurts him so much that Alfred had to let him suck some of his blood, and in a shocking twist, Nightwing actually lets them live, stating that Damian is the only vampire to ever have compassion, so keeping him around could possibly be the key to the vampires and humans living together in unison in the future. But unfortunately, with the vampires pretty much taking over the world, as a lot of the heroes are either straight up dead like Batman or turned into vampires like Superman, this chapter of the story slowly begins coming to a close as we see Jim Gordon giving Harley a vial of Lex Luthor's blood that apparently can kill vampires. He tells her to get it out of Gotham, but seeing that everyone around her wants the vial for different reasons, she eventually decides to inject it into her body, which essentially meant that whoever bites her is dead, which vampire Catwoman quickly came to find out when she tried to betray Harley by biting her. And with this, the big war between humans and vampires officially kicks off, as we see a group of human resistance getting attacked by Vampire, Plastic Man, Hawkgirl, Wonder Woman, and even Firestorm. Many heroes get killed, but the war continues nonetheless, as we see Killer Croc, Jana, and the Atom trying to revive Supergirl because there was no sun for her to absorb. Those four eventually join the rest of the resistance, where John Constantine then informs them about Harley and the cure she has in her body. But a couple of days later, when Batgirl woke up from a nightmare, she would see John Constantine dying for a reason that he didn't even know, but he nonetheless told her that they need to pull it together and head to Gotham to put an end to Nightwing once and for all. They therefore end up recruiting Harley to fight alongside what's left of the heroes to ultimately take down the Vampire King Nightwing. Meanwhile, Supergirl, Black Manta, and Steel went to find a certain spaceship to send Supergirl on it, allowing her to regain her powers. And so in the last act of the story, we see Barbara entering Gotham by the help of Damian, where she then reveals that her ultimate plan is to burn the vampires with UV light by activating multiple bat signals all at once. But then after finally coming face to face with Nightwing and having a long conversation with him, he somehow convinces her to get on his team and bites her. But what he didn't know is that she wanted the glory all for herself, as she ends up tricking him into biting Harley so that he dies and she becomes the queen of vampires. But unlike Nightwing, she doesn't want to coexist with humans, she wants to kill them all. And that was the end of part 1 of the story. The second part of it still coming out 1 issue per month, so I'll make sure to cover it when it is fully done. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get a notification when I eventually do.